We're making a gorgeous and healthier apple pie with a gluten-free oat flour pie crust and a buttery oat and pecan toasted crumble on top. With your choice of apples, this easy recipe makes a showstopper pie everyone can feel good eating. Hello, my name is Nicole Bonilla, and if you love healthier recipes to our favorite foods, then you are in the right place. Now, to mix the dough, you can do it by hand, but I highly recommend using a food processor. We're going to start by adding our dry ingredients. So I'm going to add 1 cup of my freshly home ground oat flour. Now, you're welcome to jot down these ingredients as we go along, or you can click on the link that's in the video description below, and that will take you to the full recipe with all the details. Next, we're going to add 1/3 cup of some tapioca flour, and this really enhances the dough texture. Next, we're going to add 1/4 teaspoon of salt and 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon. And then I'll just give this a quick pulse until it's all well blended. Next, we're going to add 1/2 cup of butter, which is 1 stick of butter, and you'll want to take it right out of the fridge so it's nice and cold. And then I'll just cut it down into some smaller pieces. And I'll just spread these around inside my bowl. And for a little natural sweetness, I'm adding 2 tablespoons of maple syrup. And then we'll put on our lid. Now, we don't want to blend this completely smooth, we just want to pulse it. So I'm just going to keep pulsing until the butter breaks down to about little pea-sized pieces. So that's what we're looking for. And then I've just put some water and ice into a small bowl. And I'm just going to add 1 tablespoon of ice water. And then we can mix this until it starts to form a big ball of dough. Well, we now have a nice ball of dough inside of our food processor, so this is ready. Now, to shape our pie crust, I find it works really well to do it on top of a sheet of parchment paper. And then I'm going to keep a small bowl of some tapioca flour nearby. Now, what I love about this dough is how versatile it is. You have 2 options for getting it into your pie pan. You can either take it and just press it right in, almost like you're pressing in some Play-Doh, and shape it exactly the way you like it. Or you can roll it out if you'd like to have a really even thickness, and then we can lift it and place it into our pan. So I'm going to show you how to roll it out. So we'll start by spreading out a little bit of flour onto our parchment paper, and then work our dough into a nice ball. If your dough feels too soft, you can go ahead and put it into the fridge for about 15 to 20 minutes. That will help that butter firm up. But I have found that under normal conditions, it's ready to go right after mixing. So I'll start by pressing it out into a large circle and make sure I have some flour spread around, but you don't need a ton. Then I'll take my rolling pin and lightly flour it, and then we can start rolling. And as you're rolling, you can do your best to spread it out into a nice even circle. And if you do feel it sticking at all, just add a little more flour to your rolling pin. And then I'm just going to spray it well with some coconut oil. And then flip it upside down on top of our crust. Carefully flip it over. And we can gently lift off the parchment paper. And then we'll gently lift up the sides of the dough so it fills the bottom of the dish. And this dough is very forgiving, so it's okay if it's not completely even all the way around. So once we know we have it pressed down into the inside corner, then we can go out and flatten out the sides. And since this side has a little more dough than the other side, I'll go ahead and break some off and just press it in. And now that we've smoothed around the top, we can decide if we want to leave it as is, or we can go through and make some flutes. Since my pie pan already has some flutes built in, I'm just going to go ahead and work with what's there. So wherever there's a dip, I'm going to press down with a finger and then press up a little higher where there's a rise. Now, if you could use more healthy inspiration on a regular basis, I invite you to join my email list. All you have to do is click on the link in the description below, and that is the best way for us to stay connected. And then we want to go through and make some holes with our fork so we don't get any air caught underneath the pie dough. Now, I do want to manage some expectations that this pie crust is not going to be exactly the same as a really flaky crust that's been made with white flour, but it will function and hold your pie ingredients just the same and is going to taste delicious. So now that the pie crust is ready, I'm going to go ahead and let this hang out in the fridge while we prepare the apple pie filling. Now, to make the apple pie filling, you could use any variety of apples that you like. Since I'm trying to add the least amount of sugar to this pie and still have it taste sweet, I like to use a naturally sweet apple. So I really like using the Cosmic Crisp. And I also like the fact that it has the red peel, because I'm going to be leaving that on the apples, and I really like how it looks inside of the pie. So you'll need either 4 large apples like I have, or maybe 5 medium apples, or about 6 small apples. So I'm just going to start by taking out the cores. And my little apple core makes it super easy. Next, we want to cut our apples nice and thin, and we want it to be the same thickness for all of the pieces, because that will help them cook the most evenly. And so you could do this by hand with a knife, but I have found that using a mandolin makes it really quick and easy. And I really like this one because it's made out of stainless steel. And I'm just going to set my thickness to about 1/8 of an inch. And then I'll just insert the handle into the top of the apple and start slicing. And then we have these very uniformly sliced apples. So I find it works really well to just kind of slide them back into their apple shape. And then with a knife, I'll go ahead and just cut them in half, give it a twist, and then cut them in fourths. And then I'll just break them up in my hand as I add them to a large mixing bowl. And then we can repeat for the remaining apples. Now in a small mixing bowl, we're going to add 1/3 cup of some coconut sugar, 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, and 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg, and 4 teaspoons of cornstarch, which is also 1 tablespoon plus a teaspoon. And then we'll just mix this together with a fork. And this just helps make sure that the cornstarch gets evenly distributed. And then we can sprinkle this over the apples and then add 1/4 cup of maple syrup for some more natural sweetness. And then I'll just take a spatula and stir this all together until all the apples are well coated. And then we'll let these rest while we make our crumble. So in our bowl, we want 3 tablespoons of melted butter. So I'm just going to pop this in the microwave for about 30 seconds until it's melted. Next we'll add 3 tablespoons of maple syrup, 1/4 cup of oat flour, 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon, and 1/4 teaspoon salt. And then we'll mix this together. Then we want to add 1/2 cup of old-fashioned oats, just because they have that really nice chunky size and texture, and about 1/3 cup of pecans. Now I like to just kind of break these up as I put them in, just so they're still nice and chunky, but not as whole pieces. Now we'll stir all this together. Now we are ready to assemble our pie. Now we could just dump all the apples into our pie pan, but then our apple pieces might go every which way, and it could create some air pockets inside of our pie. So this is a little bit messy and takes a little more time, but I find it works really well to just kind of take a handful of the apple pieces and then just kind of place them in by hand. So on this bottom row, I'm going to spread them out so I have nice even coverage around the bottom. And then I can place them with the round side of the apple against the round side of the pie. And as I get closer to the top, I want to place these pieces with their red peel towards the outside, because that's what's going to show through our crumble, and it's really beautiful. And then all this extra liquid that you have in the bowl, we're going to go ahead and pour over the top of the pie, because that has the cornstarch mixed in, which will help it thicken as it bakes in between the apples. Now as this bakes, the apples are going to soften and they're going to shrink down just a little bit. So it's okay to go ahead and stack your apples nice and high inside of your pie pan. Now we can take our crumble, and I'm just going to fork it out in some nice chunks on top of the pie. And then I like to spread it out within about 1 inch of the edge of the pie, just so we can see those beautiful apples underneath. I like to make sure I have a few nice big chunky pecan pieces right on top. Well, this looks gorgeous, and it is ready to bake in a 350-degree oven. Now to make sure that our apples cook through, but that the top crumble doesn't burn, we want to tent this with foil. So you'll just want to cut a piece of foil, and then very lightly, we're going to place it over the top of the pie. So I'll just kind of very gently wrap it around the pie pan. So we're going to put this into the oven for about 30 minutes, and then we're going to take off the foil and then allow it to bake for about another 20 or 25 minutes, or until the top is just turned a nice golden brown. But you'll want to keep an eye on it to make sure that that crumble on top doesn't burn. Well, here's a pie I baked yesterday. I allowed it to cool on my counter, and then I put it into my fridge covered overnight, and it is so beautiful. I love how the top is just nicely golden brown, and we can see these beautiful apples with their little red strip around the edges, and you can see down inside that that filling is just nice and firm, and we have this really beautiful fluting on the edge of our pie crust. Make sure I get a bite with the crumble and the crust and apple. That is delicious. That has all the flavors you love about apple pie, with a few bonuses, which is that really earthy flavor coming from the oat flour, and then getting those crunchy textures from the pecan and the oats that are toasted on top in the crumble. And I love that it's not overpoweringly sweet with refined sugar, because you really get to enjoy the natural sweetness of those delicious, juicy apples. And I love that it's made with all natural ingredients, which means I'm going to feel just as good even after I eat it. And I know that all of my guests can enjoy it too. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with me today in my kitchen. And I included a link to the full recipe, and it's in the video description below, which takes you to my website, gentletummy.com. And I also invite you to like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And I cannot wait to have you join me again in my kitchen.